And now, without further ado, we are ready to examine the marvelous process of the division of knowledge. Economists express this idea with the traditional term, the division of labor. We can trace this term back to Adam Smith. But the division of labor is not a suitable term. It is more appropriate to talk about the division of knowledge. To begin with, the capacity of the human mind to assimilate information is limited. There can be no doubt that our mental capacity is limited. Does anyone here doubt it? To put it another way, we are not omniscient. In fact, anthropological studies show the capacity of the modern human mind to be the same as that of the human mind 50,000, 100,000 or 150,000 years ago. Our mental capacity has not increased at all. So, if our capacity for assimilation is limited, how is it possible that we are able to take advantage of an ever-increasing and constantly expanding volume of knowledge? How is it possible that I can take advantage of all the knowledge involved in the making of this watch, the tailoring of this suit, the production of the contact lenses I'm wearing, the technological transmission devices I have on me, microphones, etc., these shoes, pens to write with? We don't know them, but thousands and thousands of people have contributed their entrepreneurial creativity. They have placed it at our service, and at this moment we are benefiting from all that experience and all that knowledge that we don't have. Furthermore, as civilization advances, we take advantage of a greater and greater volume of knowledge. The knowledge connected with the rudimentary goods I am wearing today far surpasses that connected with the goods of, say, a Roman centurion with his sword and sandals. It's quite simple. If the mental capacity of human beings is the same, how is it possible that we sustain an ever-increasing volume of entrepreneurial knowledge? The only thing that can make this possible is a constant increase in the number of minds, in the number of human beings. That is, the necessary condition for economic development is ever-increasing growth in the population.
Continuado, creciente, si quieren ustedes, más que proporcionalmente creciente, exponencialmente creciente de la población. Esto, por otro lado, es obvio.
At the same time, this is obvious because human beings are not ants. We are not bacteria. We are not a homogeneous resource. Instead, since each human being is endowed with an innate creative capacity, the more people there are, the better. Note that the creative conception of entrepreneurship is leading us to conclusions radically opposite to those we hear about, conclusions which people commonly draw and which originated with Malthus. Malthus was a genius, and he discovered a perfectly valid law, but it cannot be applied to human beings. It is applicable to bacteria and rats. That is, to animals or homogeneous resources. Though some people may disagree, bacteria and rats are not human beings.
No disponen de una innata capacidad creativa.
They lack an innate creative capacity. It turns out that rats reproduce until they reach the limit of their food supply, and when they come to the end of their food, the population limits itself. The rats begin to die. If we were rats or penguins, our given resources would determine the volume of our population. We would have resources divided by population. The smaller the population, the more resources for each member. Each rat would get more cheese. The larger the number of rats, the less cheese for each. Well, it is tragic to think that generations and generations of economists have seen human beings like rats, like bacteria, and like penguins. And these economists go on teaching classes, and even receive Nobel Prizes sometimes. However, unfortunately for their models, human beings are not bacteria. They are not rats, but instead are endowed with an innate capacity for entrepreneurial creativity. Therefore, the conclusion to be drawn is exactly the opposite. The law of Malthus that is applied in the world of biology and the natural sciences is not applicable in the world of human action. Human beings are endowed with an innate capacity to create information, and the process of civilization's limitless expansion requires constant growth in the population. This constant growth in the population rests on a continual horizontal and vertical division of knowledge. What does this mean? It means that for expansion to occur, each human being must specialize in an increasingly restricted sphere of knowledge, and his or her knowledge must be of ever greater volume and depth. Then each person exchanges the results of his or her entrepreneurial creativity and production in that sphere for the results of other people's creativity and production. The process of the limitless expansion of knowledge is a process in which people constantly specialize in narrower spheres of knowledge, where they acquire an ever deeper knowledge. I refer to this as horizontal specialization with respect to the number of spheres, and vertical specialization with respect to the depth of knowledge. In fact, if anything characterizes the advancement of civilization, it is that each human being knows less and less in relative terms, not more. How odd! So we know less and less? Yes, each of these little ants knows less in relative terms compared to the whole. Has anyone seen a movie called Jeremiah Johnson? The main character, played by Robert Redford, is disgusted with the Mexican War of the 1840s. Well, he abandons the front, I think he practically deserts, and he escapes to the unexplored western plains, where only the Native American Indians live. And he goes up into the mountains to hunt. The movie shows the beginning of his new life, which is full of hardships. He takes his rifle. He has to hunt a bison. He has to remove the meat. He has to salt it. He has to skin the animal. He has to tan the skins and sew them. He makes himself some very simple coats. Using some branches, he fashions some crude snowshoes so he can walk in the snow. Everything about his life is hard. He has to run from the Indians. Bear in mind, he knows a lot because his mind compels him to survive, and he has to know how to hunt, tan skins, cook, make clothes, build himself a crude shelter. A large quantity of knowledge in the horizontal sense. One day he is hunting, and while he is aiming at a bison, right before he pulls the trigger, he hears a shot. Bang! And that shot from who knows who kills that very bison. Well, it turns out that in those hundreds of square kilometers, there was another hunter like him. The two hunters approach each other. Both are taken aback. They are both disheveled and have long beards. They're a terrible sight. Well, the entrepreneurial light bulb goes on for them, and they become friends. Hey, when did you get here? Me too. We're both from the East, and we've both been running from the war, etc. Well, the other hunter notices that his new friend has a remarkable ability, and that in a flash he guts the bison and skins it. The light bulb goes on for the hunter, and he says, "Hey, I'm a good shot. How about I do the hunting and you take care of the bison afterward, cutting it up, etc. What do you say?" Take note. Here we see what is known as the division of knowledge. One person has a comparative advantage in one task, and he restricts his sphere of action to shooting, while the other restricts his sphere of action to tanning the skins, etc., and they exchange the results of their efforts. The one who hunts says, "Hey, this is in exchange for some of the skins," and the one in charge of the skins says, "But when you hunt a bison, hunt for me as well." And then they exchange the products of their creativity. There has been a division of knowledge. Each person specializes in the task in which he has a comparative advantage with respect to the other person. They then exchange the products of their creativity, and they both come out ahead. Humanity emerged in this way too. Men went out to hunt, and women stayed, took care of the offspring, and prepared the game. Also, later, since they were settled, while others were nomadic and came only occasionally, they noticed that sometimes when a seed fell, wheat would grow, and they could eat it. How interesting. And the next year, the same thing. They wondered why that happened, and then it occurred to them, why don't we plant the seeds? And sedentary farming began to emerge, the division of knowledge between people. I explain this process graphically as well. It is a process in which each of us increasingly specializes in the tasks in which we have a comparative advantage, and then we exchange with other people the results of our creativity.